Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Kiddushin daf Chaf Hey. We're going to begin on the second line from the top on Chaf Hey Amud Aleph. We're learning about the dinim of an Eved Kanani, of how he goes free, including the Rashi Avarim, the 24 limbs. So Sabe Dine Zunya will also appear to Rav Chisda. So this particular individual did not go to Rav Chisda's class. Armulei Rav Hamnuna. So Rav Chisda said to Rav Hamnuna, Zil, go and Saninhu. Go and, as Rashi explains, Emerlehem will his sagir relation babayas. Have him sit in his house. The fact that he did not come to my shir, what's the punishment? You don't come to class, you're in excommunication. Also, so Rav Hamnuna went. Armelhu, my time will usher rabban lapirka. Very interesting. Why didn't he just put him in excommunication? But it's only if he did it for no good reason. But he wanted to make sure that before he would excommunicate him, that he had no good reason for it. So Armelei, my nasi, why should I go? To be inan mine milsa, I ask him questions a little pashat long. He doesn't answer my questions. So the notion of feeling ignored is one of the biggest issues. Like, why should I go to you when you don't respond to me? So it's feel like I'm not even there anyway. So Malhu says, 1 second. Mi be'isu mi noi midi. You could ask me something. You tell me the great Rav Chisda couldn't answer your question. Even you asked me Rav Hamnuna, I could also answer your questions. So Bamine, so asked him a question. He said, Eved sheser surabo bebeitzim mahu. If you have an Eved in which he was basically castrated by the beitzim, by the testicles, what is the din? So if the Adain did this and took away his beitzim or harmed his beitzim to the extent that it did significant harm, so the question is, will he be able to go free because of that? Kamum shibagoli dami o lo. Is that considered to be a mum shibagoli or not? So we'll have a biyade. So Rav Hamnu didn't know. So Amrullah, he said, Mashemach, what's your name? Amrullahu, Hamnuna. So Amrullah, Rav Hamnuna el Karnuna. Your name shouldn't be called Hamnuna, it should be called Karnuna. So obviously that sounds like some element of an insult. So Rashi says means Yoshid Kranais Ata V'loi Bal Torah. You don't know how to answer these questions? You're a Yoshid Kranais. Right? As we say at every Siyam, also in Brachos, that Anu Mil and Hamil and Anu Kal. So I get up to learn Torah and you're a Yoshid Kranais. Says Taisus, Yoshid Kranais Ata V'loi Bal Torah. Rabbeinu Chanano Pirish Ato Aimer Hamnuna Hainu Cham Nuna. You think you're a Cham Nuna, which is a dag Cham. You're a hot fish. The Eno Kain El Karnuna Dag Shukar. You're a cold fish. So you call him a cold fish. Also came to Rav Chisda. So he went to Rav Chisda. Or Malay Masnisa Boy Minach. He asked you a question which is pretty explicit. It's brought down in the Tosefta, or in the Mishnah, it says over here, and the side it says Tosefta, but it's Ditnan, which sounds like it's a Mishnah. Esrim v'arba rashi avarim sheba adam. There's 24 limbs of a person. Kulam enam atamin mishum michya. You will not become tummy mishum michya. Says Rashi, shem echad nagayim. So there's numerous types of, we'll call it leprosy, tsaras, and one of them is called michya. So on this, Rashi quotes the pasuk, "Chol mari eni hakayin." It has to be that the kayin examines you and he could see it. Shedehi kula niris ka'achas, that he should be able to see it all in one shot. So if it's on your right here, so he could see the entirety of the blotch on your skin. But it can't be something that you'd have to like move around your body to be able to see it at different times. Something which is like on a slope. Goes on all sides. You can't see it all in one time. Ve'elhein Rashi etzba'os. So if you have something on the finger, so he said you have to move the finger around. So it's the Rashi Etzbais Yadayim Raglayim, your fingers and your toes. So that's 20. For Rashi Aznaim, the tips of your ears. V'rosh hachaitim, and your nose. V'rosh hagvia. V'rosh hagvia, Rashi says, is the gid, is the aver of a man. V'roshi dadim shebeisha, and the tips of the breasts of a woman. Rashi says, avol beish enum boltin kol kach v'en ze shipua. So because they don't protrude out so much by a man, so therefore it's shaykh that he could examine all one time. Yehuda Omer af shebeish. Rabbi Yehuda says no, also by a man, also the dadim. The tani wa bekulam eved yatzim becheres. In all those cases, the eved goes free. So therefore, as we didn't hear what the 24 are in yesterday's daf. Here we do mention again the easiest 20 is the fingers and the toes, and then these others, ears, nose, etc. Rabbi Omer, and here is the key. Afasirus. Says Rashi, Moisif al Eil Inyan Eved V'Shem V'Ayin Eved V'Shem V'Ayin Lo Itzrach Le Rabbi Limnois B'Tosefta V'Hediksiv V'Zil Kari B'Ravhu Atanago L'Pogala. It doesn't mention Shem V'Ayin because it doesn't mention Shem V'Ayin because all you need to do is just look in the psukim. We don't need to do that. We assume you have that level of knowledge before you walked in here. So these are examples, and it mentions Sirus. Now Sirus perhaps is talking about Sirus the Beitzim. Benazei Omer Afalashain. Also the tongue. Why? Should Darcho li Roi, says Rashi, Kashim Medaber Umum Shebagolihu. When a person speaks, you can see the tongue. And therefore, if you damage the tongue, that's considered to be a mum shebagoli. As we said in yesterday's daf, like shein v'ayin, it's a mum, a blemish which is outside. So too the tongue is outside. Okay. Omer Mar, Rabbi Omer Afasirus, Sirus Damai. Ilema, Sirus the Gid, Hainu Gavia. We already mentioned Gavia, which is the Gid, which is the male organ. Elalav, Sirus the Beitzim. So we see clearly that it's brought down that when it comes to Sirus the Beitzim, there's an opinion that you'll go free. Rabbi Omer Afasirus, Rabbi Lashin, fine. Rabbi Omer Afasirus. So he says also Sirus. Rabbi Lashin Lo, it must be he's not including the tongue, because if you look at the order, Rabbi includes Sirus, and then Ben Azai says also the tongue. It must be, the fact is, Rabbi must hold that if you knock out or harm his tongue, let's say knock on his tongue, then you will not go free. A person who needs to be sprinkled upon. V'nitza haza al piv, and the guy did the sprinkling of the paraduma on his mouth. Rabbi Omer hiza, it works. My love al shainai, probably talking about on the tongue, and therefore we see that this is the whole machlokus, whether or not when you do the sprinkling it has to be something on the outside. Lo al safasav, that it was on his lips. So al safasav shita. Well, I understand. So manatema zimna decholim sifsei. Sometimes a person closes up their lips, and therefore because of that, maybe that's not considered shibagoli kamashmulan of asanya al shaina, and then it says al shainai, which again is mashma that he holds not the tongue. But furthermore, Tanya, we learned v'shenita roiv halashain, if the majority of the tongue was removed. Actually, let's look at Rashi. What says shenita roiv halashain linyan mumi b'chor shon b'charis. So this is referring to the din of a firstborn animal. So let's say the majority of its tongue was removed. Rabbi Omer rov ha'medaber has to be the majority of the tongue in which is used for the sake of speech. That is the part we're talking about. Elo Rabbi Omer Sirus v'lo b'boy lashain. What he must be talking about, therefore, is when he says Afasirus, he's not talking about excluding the tongue, because we see clearly over here he does include it. So therefore, because he says he says the tongue does count. So too, when he says Afasirus, he wasn't saying not the tongue. He was saying the tongue, but also Sirus in not only the tongue. Ben Azai Loshan Avasirus Loi. And Ben Azai, therefore, when he says Afaloshain, he's excluding the Sirus. So my Af, Akamaisa. So why does Ben Azai say Af? He's going on the first statement. So Ben Azai is, I guess, a little bit out of order, but the truth is, Ben Azai, when he said Afal Lashon, he's saying there's 24 Ivarim, but I also will include the tongue, but I'm not going to include the Sirus. So therefore, we actually have a machlokas when it comes to Sirus debates. Ihachi Naktama de Ben Azai Bereisha. Again, it makes more sense he should be first, so it doesn't get all this confusion. So Tanashama with the Rabbi Bekava, Bishama with Ben Azai Vetani. So again, we're dealing with two heavy hitters over here, Ben Azai, but Rebbe. So I'm going to put Rebbe first, even though it's true the language would have made more sense that Ben Azai should have been mentioned first, because when he said Afal Lashon, he was excluding the Sirus, and Rebbe, when he said Afasirus, he was actually also including the tongue. So it actually would have made more sense for Ben Azai's opinion to be mentioned before Rebbe's, but that's how it is. We don't want to change things. Even if you can sometimes, very interesting, even though sometimes you could change something for the better, but sometimes change could add confusion. And therefore, if you're going to add confusion, then sometimes it's better to keep things the way they are, because people are used to it and they understand it and they'll remember it. And if they're working efficiently, and this is an issue that we often have when it comes to a new boss. They walk in, a new manager, a new principal, they need to mix things and change things up. And it's possible they're even doing it for the best. They can actually make some good improvements. But they also have to realize that change sometimes could cause problems, even if that change seemingly is good. So you have to know how to balance that. Okay. So Omer Ula, Hakol Moedim, and this is going to be question 5. Let's look at question 5. Lushing, the tongue. Ma dina kigoloi. In what ways is it like it's out in the open? Ma dina katamoin. In what ways is it considered like it's inside? Ma plukta. Where do we find the machlok? So, this is the answer. Question 5. Hakol moedim is also going to be TA22. Let me just mark that down. TA22. So, when it comes to the dinim of Tumah and the sprinkling of the mechatis, the golihu, eitzel hasheretz, it's considered, actually, I jumped the gun, it's considered to be, that's not correct what I said, so let's start again. When it comes, everyone holds it's considered to be outside when it comes to a sheretz. It says Rashi, the kaimalan maga, Bein hasasarim ein matama. We generally hold that if there's a sheretz touches, now sheretz causes tumah. But that's only if it touches on the outside. If, let's say, I don't want to think about this too much, but if a sheretz touches the inside of your body, that doesn't do anything. So it has to be on the outside, not beis hasasarim. It says Rashi, Kol asher yiga b'hazav, but davar shehu goli kiyadav. It has to be just like something which is like the hand on the which is on the outside. So when it comes to a tongue, if a sheretz touches this guy's tongue, so that causes tumah. My timer asher yigaboy amrachmana v'hainami barnigehu. It's also touching. So when it comes, that answers one of the 3 questions. When it comes to the touching of a sheretz, it's matama, because it's considered to be outside the tongue. In tefillah, katamudami. When it comes to tefillah, thank goodness, you don't actually have to go to the mikvah with your mouth wide open. So the water, the main mikvah goes around your tongue. You can actually keep your mouth closed, and it's highly recommended you do so. My timer, it says your basar, which is on the outside, avkol me'avroi, has to be something which is always on the outside, not your tongue, which is often inside your mouth, and hopefully more often than not. So that's the second thing. So when it comes to tefillah, you don't have to have your tongue outside, because it's considered inside. Lo nechol el inyan hazah. The machlokas is by hazah, by the sprinkling. Rabbi madam lo toma, and therefore it's like on the outside. Rabbanan madam lo tefillah, and therefore it's like on the inside. Both of them argue with the following pasuk. V'hiza hatar alatame v'gaimer. Rabbi Sabar v'hiza hatar alatame. When you tar a person sprinkles on the tummy person, b'yom hashlishi v'yom hashviya, on those the third and seventh day, the sprinkling of the paraduma v'chitoi. It says, and you'll purify him. Rabbanan Savri v'chitoi b'yom hashvi v'chibes begadav v'rachas b'mayim. It mentions the chibes begadav. Okay, let's look at Rashi. First of all, ma'avroi. You don't have to put water into your mouth when you go to the mikvah. And stick your tongue out in yochel. Utfil mixas lashachan. We don't find tefil b'mixas. So Rabbi said is darshan. Darshan is the following pasuk regarding sprinkling. Al hatame v'chitoi. Since you purify him, chitoi al makom tuma havi chitoi. So it's the place of tuma is that where he needs to be purified. Rabbanan says the chibetz begadav. Says Rashi beinan chitoi sheyipol al makom haroil or chitza dahainu tefillah. The place which is fit to be bathed, which that is the part which needs tefillah. Okay. So that is the different ways, but the same pasuk, but how to interpret what is what the din would be halacha regarding the tongue. Is it true that even Rabbi holds that the tongue is like the inside when it comes to tefillah, and therefore you don't have to put water in your mouth or stick your tongue out? There was a story of this shivcha. She immersed herself also in came out of the mikvah. She forgot the floss. She had a tooth in her teeth. She had a bone stuck in there. He said, go to the mikvah again. What do you mean? You don't need to have anything inside your mouth. You don't have to put water in your mouth. So why would you have to brush your teeth? Why do you have to floss before you go to the mikvah? There's no water going in there anyway. So nihid bias mayim will be inon, makam haroil avoy bo mayim be inon. K'Rav Zera. Even though it's true, water doesn't need to go in your mouth, and it shouldn't, but it needs to be clean to the extent that if it would go, then there would be no chatzitza. Just like Rav Zera. The famous Rav Zera, Dim Rav Zera, Kol haroil labila in be'ila makevas boy, V'shein roil labila, bila makevas boy. So Rashi brings down in more Menachos, it says, Ein mavi'in mincha shel shisha ve'echad, isaron b'kli echad. If you're bringing 61 isaron, you can't put all of that flour into one kli, because you just won't be able to mix it. It's too much. The kim lahu rabbanan the in shein nevon yafe b'shavin ba'achad. You can't mix it very well. So over there it says, what do you mean? It says imu bol kosher. We learned that even if you didn't mix it at all, it's still a good carb. It's still a good mincha. So Rav Zera says, you're right, but it has to be roy. Even though it's true you don't have to mix it, but it has to be that in the event that you do mix it, that you could mix it. So even if you don't have to, but nonetheless it has to be fit to do it. So too when it comes to the tefillah, that even though it's true you don't put water in your mouth, but it has to be fit that if water would go in their mouth, there would be no chatzitza, which is the reason why the tongue and inside the mouth is considered tamoin, like inside, and does not require mikvah water, but at least if there's a bone or something in your teeth, then it needs to be taken out. Okay. As we continue to Chav Hamad Beis. Kitanoi. This whole notion, which we just brought down, is actually a machlokas among Tanoim. What is that? Serious debates im havimum goli. Whether or not, if, again, the Eved attacks and hits this man's beitzim, whether he'll go free. The pasuk says, umoch, squashed, the kosus, or cut, the natuk, torn, the korus, or severed. Kulan bebeitzim, Div Rabbi Huda. This is all referring to the beitzim. Bebeitzim v'lo begid. So how's that possible? The gid is definitely goloi. So then why would you say that that's not included? Elva kulan af bebeitzim, Div Rabbi Huda. Rabbi Yehuda says that don't tell me that beitzim is a mum tamoin. That certainly that's not the case. But it also includes the beitzim. So again, this is talking about a bechor, whether it has a mum. Rabbi Eliezer and Yankov Omer kul megid. No, it's only referring to a gid. All these types of mumim is dafka by a gid, but not the beitzim. That's not considered to be a mum. Rabbi Yossi Omer moch v'kosus is af bebeitzim. That includes not just the gid, but also beitzim. However, not the v'karus begid in bebeitzim lo. Notuk, says Rashi, if it's torn biyad, by hand, legamri, completely, yadayin tluyin bekis, but they're still hanging by its pouch. Okay, let's see the next Mishnah. Probably Dirsha's not going to ask me any questions on that. It says Namas Nisan, behema gasa. So we began talking about how to acquire a woman, how do you get married? Second Mishnah is how do you acquire an Eved Ivri. Third is how you acquire an Eved Kanaini. So we're going progression. We're talking about a woman, Isha Kagufo, then we talk about Avadim. Now we're going to talk about the kinyan of animals. Behema Gasa Niknis B'Masira. So the way that you can acquire a Behema Gasa, a big animal, is B'Masira, by handing it over. Badaka Bahagbo. And when it comes to a small animal, you can physically lift it up because it's not too. You're pretty strong. You can lift up a small little animal. Dibra Meir, Rabbi Lezer, that when it comes to just like a normal kinyan of metaltalin, so you can do mashicha. Now, the fact that it said hagba, that first sheet of our Mishnah, when it comes to a small animal, Rashi says hagba v'lo b'mashicha. It's coming to say you cannot do mashicha on a behema daka. Okay. Now, what does it mean when it comes to a behema gasa you acquire it b'masira? So Rashi says, that you give it over to the buyer with its saddle, or basar, its hair, as we learned previously, of a mashicha loy. You can only do, when it comes to behema gasa, masira, but not mashicha. Okay. So apparently that was not the norm of doing mashicha on a behema gasa. Let's see the Gemara. Darish Rav bikim chunya behema gasa nes mashicha. He says that behema gasa actually is. You are able to be kind of a behema gasa with mashicha by pulling it. So Ashke Shmuel Talmid Rav Amar Lahu Mi Amar Rav behema gasa nes mashicha. Is that true? But not masira tanan. It doesn't say in our Mishnah mashicha. It only says masira. It says Rav nami masira Imar. Rav also is saying nami masira. It's not coming to exclude mashicha, but inclusive of masira. We do both. So Hadabei Mahahi, is he retracting? No, Hudi Omer Kiaitana. Yeah, he actually was chayzer because he holds like the following: the sign of Amrim Zuvazu Nichnas Mashicha, that Zuvazu behema gasa and a behema daka, you can be kind of both of them with mashiach, which means that he holds that again. Unlike what the pashtus of the Mishnah that says a behema gasa can be kind of a masira only, no, also the mashicha. Or Shimon Aimer Zuvazu Bahagba, that you can also do hagba on a behema gasa with an elephant. Right? Now I'm not that strong. What do you mean? You're telling me that you can do mashicha on a peel? How do you do that? So even if, let's say you're right, you can't, if the animal's pretty big, there's big and then there's an extra large, right? So in that situation, maybe it doesn't work. So in that case, you can do chalipin, and that would be fine. Inami, you rent out its place. So if you rent out its place, so whenever it's underneath, so you're kind of that which is above it, as we're going to see like through a kinyan from karka to metaltalin, kinyan agav. Reb Zer Oimer maybe arba kalim manichem tachas raglav. You should take 4 really strong kalim, put it underneath the elephant's feet, and have them go on top of it. So Shemamino Kel V'Shalekech Rishus Moicher Kan Lekech, which we had before numerous places. Is that true? Because it's actually a machlokas. If you have the vessels of Lekech that are in the Rishus of the Moicher, so you can be kind of the object there. The Gemara says that's not necessarily a raya that's the case, because against the machlokas we don't want to establish ourselves like one opinion. Hachabay skinin besimta. It's possible that this elephant was in a simta. Rashi says Zavius. He ate the Rishus Harabim. It's like at a corner near the Rishus Harabim. The Einol Rishus Harabim Rishus Yachid. A simta is kind of like this hybrid. It's not exactly a Rishus Harabim, not exactly a Rishus Yachid. It's somewhere in between, and therefore, in that situation, that's not considered to be a Rishus Moich. That's not the Rishus Moich. It's not the Rishus Lekeach, but it's still a place where kinyanim can take place, and therefore that's where it is. Chavav Amud Aleph Inami b'chavili zemoiros. Says Rashi, Mishkachas lahagba eitzel pil. How do we find lifting up an elephant? B'chavili zemoiros. Hagvoyim min aretz shleish tvachim. If let's say you put a bunch of branches and that elephant stands on top of them and elevates at 3 tefachim from the ground, says Rashi did nafli mataris lavud, because 3 tefachim to the ground is keel like it's on the ground. But if he was able to be 3 tefachim above the ground, so it's no longer within the realm of lavud, and therefore it will you could be kaina. Okay, let's look at Taisus first. The im timer with regard to tefillah, but tefillah b'nolan to be in and roy. How do we know? I understand when it comes to a mincha, but why does it have to be roy that there's an issue of having a bone in your teeth? The Yishloimer Mishum Dechsiv Rachatz as Kol Besarai. It says you have to wash all of your basar. The mashma feel based as sesarim. Then itself mashma even something on the inside. Uksiv v'yadav in your hands. V'darshin and my yadav mavroi af kol mavroi. So umamatim based as sesarim, and therefore it excludes it. So you have one part of the pasuk which includes the inside, because it says kol, and then it says yadav, which it sounds to be excluding that which is on the inside. So says Taisus, Mikol Makim Kiban de Ika Kol de Marbinon a field basis Sasarim, since that's inclusive, Ikol Mimel Chol Pachai Sahachi Merabi to be in Royal Labilos Mayim. So it's an interesting idea, is that the reason why do you have to brush your teeth and floss before you go to the mikveh? It's because on one hand there is the pasuk says kol, which is mashma, it includes basis sar. So therefore it's like this. Therefore you need this in between that doesn't have to go inside, but has to be fit to go inside. Okay, question 6 and TB23. Elu kinyanim matzinu behema gasa de mahani leave the kuliyam. What are the kinyanim that definitely work for a big animal? Chalipin, if you're seiches mimkaimo, or maybe arba kalim, if you put 4 vessels, dominichan tachas raglav, and it has to be koi besimta. Has to be in the simta. This may actually be a different question. TB23. Be'eza kinyan niknas behemagasa. Right? So we already mentioned a few of them. Chalipin, seiches mimkaimoi, but our Mishnah actually also says more. This is actually not really the same question. Our Mishnah says Masira, which is mashma, not Mashicha. And the Brisa says Mashicha and certainly Masira. And Rav Shimon holds Hagba, which means Hagba v'lo Masira v'lo b'Mashicha. And that was the reason why we asked the Kasha over there, because what do you mean? How's it shaykh to do Hagba? Because according to him, it says Behemagas, you must do Hagba. Well, it doesn't mean you have to do it, just excluding Masir Mashicha, but you can still do these other things like Chalip and the Seiches and Kaimai. Adkan.